Let's begin with a provocative question. Could your personality, your tendency to be anxious, outgoing, empathetic, or even risk-taking, be influenced not just by your brain or upbringing, but by trillions of microscopic organisms living inside your gut? This video explores a fascinating frontier of the gut-brain axis. We're not talking metaphorically here. The gut houses its own nervous system, the enteric nervous system, often called the second brain. And it turns out your gut microbes, collectively known as the microbiome, are major players in how that second brain talks to your actual brain. Over the next few slides, we'll break down how gut bacteria send chemical messages that impact mood, behavior, and personality traits. We'll dive into the science behind neurotransmitter production, animal behavior studies, microbiome diversity, and what all this means for mental health. In the end, you'll understand why the phrase gut feeling is more biologically accurate than ever before. To understand how gut bacteria influence personality, we must first explore the communication highway between gut and brain, what we call the gut-brain axis. This axis includes the vagus nerve, a massive cranial nerve that connects the gut to the brainstem and transmits sensory information. The immune system, where gut microbes interact with immune cells to release cytokines that influence inflammation and brain function. And endocrine signaling, including hormones like cortisol and microbial metabolites that can enter the bloodstream and reach the brain. Importantly, this is a two-way street. The brain sends signals to the gut during stress, slowing digestion, or altering microbiota composition, and the gut in turn sends signals that can influence stress reactivity, emotion, and cognition. Microbial communities living inside your intestines are not passive. They produce and modulate signaling molecules like serotonin, GABA, and dopamine. About 90% of your body's serotonin, the mood-regulating neurotransmitter, is actually produced in the gut. Gut bacteria help regulate its availability and breakdown. In essence, these microbes act like chemical diplomats, influencing the tone and balance of neural communication, and that communication can influence who you are. Now let's get into the chemistry. The microbiome doesn't just affect your gut, it acts as a neurochemical factory. Different bacterial species produce or modulate neurotransmitters. Lactobacillus and Bifidobacterium species can produce GABA, a calming neurotransmitter that reduces anxiety. Certain microbes influence tryptophan metabolism, which affects serotonin availability. Others regulate dopamine, linked to reward sensitivity and motivation. These microbial chemicals can cross the gut lining and enter systemic circulation or interact with the vagus nerve to signal the brain. What does this mean behaviorally? Studies show that imbalances in gut microbiota, called dysbiosis, are linked to anxiety, depression, and cognitive fog. For instance, people with major depressive disorder often have lower microbial diversity and fewer anti-inflammatory species. The emotional tone of your day, whether you feel grounded or edgy, may not just be psychological. It may be microbial. This is where it gets really fascinating. Emerging studies show associations between specific gut microbiota profiles and personality traits like sociability, linked with greater gut microbial diversity, openness associated with abundance of short-chain fatty acid producers, neuroticism, correlated with higher levels of pro-inflammatory microbes. One 2019 study found that people with more varied and balanced gut bacteria scored higher on measures of extroversion and emotional stability. But correlation doesn't imply causation. That's where animal studies come in. In mice, fecal microbiota transplants, FMTs, literally transferring gut bacteria from one mouse to another, can change behavior. Anxious mice become more social after receiving microbiota from outgoing donors. Germ-free mice raised in sterile conditions exhibit higher stress hormones and social deficits. These aren't just passive correlations, they're causal links. It suggests that your temperament may be partly microbial, shaped by what's living inside you. So if microbes shape personality, what shapes your microbes? Diet is a single most powerful modulator of the gut microbiome. A fiber-rich, plant-diverse diet feeds beneficial bacteria like Bacillobacterium and Akkermansia, which produce short-chain fatty acids like butyrate, that support brain health, reduce inflammation, and modulate mood. In contrast, a Western diet high in saturated fats, sugar, and processed foods reduces microbial diversity and promotes inflammation. And remember, inflammation impacts the reward system, social cognition, and stress circuits in the brain. So the food you eat can indirectly affect how you react to stress, how motivated you feel, and even how connected you are to others. Multiple studies now suggest that long-term dietary patterns influence not just health markers, but psychological traits such as vitality, self-control, and even empathy. The question becomes, can we intentionally shift our microbiome to improve mental well-being? That's the goal of psychobiotics. Probiotic strains specifically studied for mood enhancement. Some promising examples are Lactobacillus rhamnos, reduces anxiety-like behavior in rodents and lowers stress hormones. Bifidobacterium longum has shown antidepressant-like effects in both animals and small human trials. But diet is just one tool. You can also support your microbiome through sleep. Regular circadian rhythm stabilizes gut bacteria. Exercise increases microbial richness and promotes anti-inflammatory strains. Stress reduction. Chronic stress disrupts gut barrier function and microbial balance. This toolkit doesn't replace therapy or medication, but it represents a new adjunctive approach, using the gut to support the brain. Let's tie it all together. We've long believed that our brain and our mind dictate who we are, but the science of the microbiome suggests that we must expand that view. Your gut bacteria doesn't just digest food, they help produce neurochemicals, regulate inflammation, and interact with the nervous system in ways that shape emotion, behavior, and personality. In a world where anxiety and loneliness are rising, understanding the gut-brain connection offers a new dimension of healing. It invites us to look beyond neurotransmitters and ask, what's happening in the gut? The future of psychology might not just be in the mind, it may start with what we feed our microbes. Because when your gut is balanced, your brain and your personality might flourish too.